Hey class, we're taking a look at how to do a Friedman's test using the ANOVA template. It's really easy to do with that. You don't have to do a whole lot of stuff by hand here. I'm using a questionnaire here called the Business Admin 111 Personal Data Survey. We saw this back in Unit D. It's an example of a bad survey. But I also added some questions at the end here. And there's one in particular that I want to focus on, and it's this guy right here. So what are the three main reasons for selecting RDC for your diploma? Rank up to three choices, where one is your top reason, two is your second most important reason, and three is your third most important reason. Only rank those that are important reasons to you. So not everybody will rank up to three, but do not rank beyond three reasons. And then if there's an other, then you're going to indicate your reason here. So let's take a look then at that. Now, in a set of videos called Data Cleaning, there's about 5 videos there, I talked about how to clean up the data. And I thought it would be good actually to go back and just take a look at this particular one here and clean that up again so that you've seen this here. So I'm going to get rid of all of the columns here except for these guys here. So question number 15 then is our ranking question. So it looks like that. All right, and then I've got my row number. Maybe I'll change that to respondent number, like so. And then let's talk about how to clean this up here. Because this is quite a dog's breakfast right now. I mean, you've got words here, you've got X's here. You'll see that you've got some other stuff down here which just doesn't work. The first thing I want you to notice is that when you're doing a Friedman's test here, you don't want to include the others or the comments. Now, that's not to say that they're not important. When you're writing up the summary for this particular question here, what you would do is you would actually note the number of people who chose other and what their particular comments were, what their other reasons were. So it's not that they're not important, and they should certainly appear in the write-up, but when you do the actual Friedman's test, you don't want to include them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of those 2 columns there. And then we're just left with the other 5 here. Now, it's not a problem, actually, that some people rank the other as 1, 2, or 3. The template that I'm going to show you will actually take that all into account. But we still got some problems here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in 3 columns here. I'm going to call one just count, and another one I'm going to call count A. And then I'll just put, it doesn't matter what we call the other one. Let's call it, are they equal? All right. Do they match? Something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm in row 2 here. So the first value, I'm going to put in equals count. And then I'm going to count up these 5 cells here. And what you'll see is that it comes to 0. Let me actually change that to something which is about, how about a 14 point, so you can see that a little bit better. Maybe I'll make this a little bigger too. Okay, so that is the count function that we have in there. And then over here, I'm going to put in a count A function. I'm going to count the same cells. And then finally, for the equal, I'm just going to say, well, does this number equal that number? And in this particular case, it doesn't. So what the count does is it counts up numerical values. The count A counts any cell that has something in it. So anything that's not a blank cell. And then this one actually asks then, well, are the 2 equal? And so in the end, we want them to be equal. So what I'm going to do, and again, let me just change these to a little bigger. I'm going to copy these all the way down, like so. And then I'm going to just paint these here, color them orange. And again, the reason why I color this here is because we're going to be doing some sorting here. We want to make sure that these are all sorted together, because anything in a particular row is for a particular respondent. So this is respondent number 4's choices, 1, 2, and 3. And so they need to stay together in the rows here. And so we do that with the counts too. It's important that you put labels at the top of these columns if we're going to do some sorting. So now what we do is we sort according to, well, let's start with the count A. And so I go to data, and then I'm going to go A to Z. And the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of any of the rows where the person didn't answer the question. So in this particular case, then we've got 2 people here who didn't even answer this question. And so we don't want to include them in our results here. So we can just get rid of those. So I'm just going to delete the first 2 rows there. And then everything else is fine. We can go from 1 all the way down to 4 in this particular case here. So we've got that. And then what we do is we go down here and we notice that the count A and the count should be the same. And so you just run down here until you find some falses here. And I mean, we can compare the 2 numbers, but I like to do this column here where I just simply say is one equal to the other. And so it's really easy to find the number of falses there. And here's a case then when the person put in, instead of the numbers 1, 2, and 3, they put in the words. And so that's why the count is 0, but the count A is 3. So we're going to manually change those. This is 1, this is 3, this is 2, and then this is a 3, this is a 2, and this is a 1 here. And so now these are both 3s, and these change to 2s, or to trues. Down here we've got somebody put in X's. Now what do you do with that? They handle it like a check all that apply. So they put in some X's instead. What you do is you just put in 1s like this. Now, you might look at this and say, well, Doug, if you were doing this by hand, what you taught us then is that they hold the first, second, and third values. And so shouldn't you give them an average ranking of 2? And the answer is, yeah, you can do that. You can put in all 2s and so on like this. But the template that I'm going to show you will actually take that into account. It'll actually change them into 2s. And then it'll change the blanks into other values then. So I'm going to continue running down here. True, true, true. And it looks like I'm fine. If I've got tons and tons of columns here, what I'll often do here is, and let me just change the size of this font here so you can see this a little bigger here. I'll put in a function here called a countIf. So I'll say countIf, and I'm going to count all the way up here, all these trues, and then comma, and then put in the word true. So this is what the thing looks like. And it counts up then the number of trues. And if you've got hundreds and hundreds of rows, of course, sometimes it's easy to miss one of those falses. But this tells us then that we've got, well, 81 rows. Of course, the first row has titles in it. So there's 80 people, 80 respondents. And so I know now that I've got all trues here. And so that means that my counts and my count A's are all the same. Now, the only other problem here then is that they were only supposed to put in 3 choices here. So here's some people who only put in 1 choice, and that's not a problem. It said up to 3. So that's actually not a problem. These ones are not an issue here. And even these ones where they only put in 2, they're not an issue. And so on. What you might find in some of these is that they had chosen other, and so you might only see 2s and 3s. Here's an example of that, right? You had 2s and 3s, and that's because they had chosen the other as their first choice. Don't worry about that. You don't have to change those 2s and 3s to 1s and 2s. The template will take care of that. But we do have a problem. When you go down here, you've got the 1s, 2s, 3s. Most of them, of course, are 3s. We get to the very bottom, and here's somebody who actually put in 4 of the values here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's actually illegal. You're only allowed to put in 4. So you just get rid of it. Get rid of the 4 like that. And now we've cleaned this up. So these are all maximum of 3 in terms of the counts. You don't worry so much about these numbers in here, as I mentioned, because the template's going to take that into account. So I can get rid of these columns now if I want. You don't need to get rid of them, because all what you're going to do now is just copy and paste this into a template. So I'm going to go up to the top. It doesn't matter where the data are sorted again according to respondent number. What is a good thing to check is to see that all of these orange guys stayed together, and they did, which means that all of the rows, all of the columns sorted together. And so that is good. So what we do now is I go over here and I'm opening up this way. I'm opening up a file called the ANOVA-Template. And I've made a copy of this. And this is taken from the supplementary files folder. This is the same template that we use to do the ANOVA tests, the one-way ANOVA tests, as well as the Kruskal-Wallis tests. But you'll see that there's a little tab down here that says Friedman's. So we're going to click on the Friedman's tab. And that gives us then the Friedman's two-way non-parametric ANOVA. Now you can change your alpha here. But what we're going to do is we're going to go back here. And I'm actually going to grab the respondent numbers. That's not really essential to do that, but this is a two-way ANOVA, and so you can grab the respondent numbers and all of the data down here, including the titles at the top. So I go all the way down, and I'm going to copy these, and then I'm going to come over here, and you see where the gray cell is there? I'm going to click on that, go up to the little arrow next to the paste, which gives me the paste special, and I'm going to paste the values. Alternatively, I could right-click on that cell, the gray cell, and choose Paste Special Values. And there you go. Now, it'll ignore the respondent column. That's not a problem there. But what it gives you now is the results of the two-way ANOVA. And so what do we have here? We've got the critical value is 11.07, and we end up with a very high chi-square value of 50. So that gives us a p-value of 0. So we reject HO, and that means that there's a significant difference between these treatments. So this is what you do, is you go and you copy these cells here, grab the treatments, and go all the way across until you get all of the orange cells that have a named variable, a named column here, a named choice. So in this particular case then 15, which is rep. I think that's reputation. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to go over to my write-up. So I'm writing this up somewhere, and I'm going to paste that. Okay. Now, one thing to note here is that this, if you've got a whole bunch of these guys, sometimes they go a little bigger, so you might have to fiddle around with this, make it a smaller font, and then tighten these up, right? You can always go on the line between two cells here and just double click. Oh, that made it bigger. There, that made it smaller, and so on. The other thing too is, you see where it says respondent number? Just click in that cell and get rid of it. So click on that cell, right click, and you're going to delete cells and just shift everything to the left, which is the default. And I'm going to show you why you do that in a minute. Okay, now for one thing, that actually gave us some space here, so this is no longer going over the margin here. But the reason why I did that is I'm going to go back here, and over to the side here, I've got all of those rankings. Remember I said that the template actually puts in all of the rankings as if you were to do this by hand. And so it's got the average rankings for the blank cells and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these guys here. So the counts, the average rankings, and the total RJs. I don't really need the squared ones. I've included them there in case you're doing this by hand and you want to check your work. But I would grab these three guys here and copy them, and then move back over here, and underneath this table, paste them. Oops. Oh, well, that worked out. Okay. I might come down a little bit and then paste it. That's better. So the reason why I got rid of the respondent is that then everything would be shifted over one. But what we've got now is that these are underneath here. You might need to change the widths of these columns here. And so you can go and find, well, the way that I find it best to do is go up here to the paragraph marker at the very top, and that actually shows you there where the actual column is, like that. So you do that. You can make them bigger if you want, like that. See how you can move them over? So you might need to do that, like that. And this is kind of rough, but you can clean this up like that. Okay. And that looks a lot better. And then just take off the paragraph marker. So you might want to clean that up a little bit more. But this is useful because now we can analyze this thing, and it says that we reject HO. So reject HO means that at least one of these is preferred more than the others. And this is where you take a look then at the average rankings. Now remember, a low ranking is a more preferred item, right? Because our first choice, we gave it a 1, and then our second choice a 2, and so on like that. And so what you do then is you look here and you say, I would just simply say that these 3 are higher than these ones. Okay, so the average ranking then is 3. Now, you don't get concerned in terms of the average ranking here, because it looks like they're very poor rankings, right? I mean, we're only supposed to rank the top 3, but that's because we are ranking across 5 cells. So you don't worry so much about what the actual numbers are, just their relative difference here. So lower rankings here, this is saying that location and cost and reputation are more important than these reasons here, family and program, and I think that's recommendation. So that's how we would do that. These numbers here give you the total RJs, and so this one is actually saying the lowest one is location, because it's got the smallest total RJs here. All right, and then the highest one is this one here. So you can take a look at the order here, but the important thing is that we don't know whether they're significantly different. For instance, is this significantly different from this? They're both 3s. So when I write this up, I would tend to list them in the order. So this one first, because it's the smallest, and then it looks like this one over here, and then that one, and then that one, that one, and that one. And then I would say that these three have more preferable ratings or rankings than these ones here. Okay. Now, the last thing that I would do up here is I would change this to something which is specific to our particular problem here. So I would say something like all the reasons for choosing RDC are equal, like that. It looks like we're in a table, so I might need to, can I merge that? There we go. That looks a little cleaner. And now you've got a nice clean problem here, so you would write that up. Okay, so that is how you do a Friedman's test using the ANOVA template, and that's where I'm going to end this video. Thanks for watching.